Welcome to part 1 of lesson 69. Today you're going to need some kind of straight edge. It could be a ruler, just anything with a straight edge, a pencil box, could be a folder if you need to, but something that has a straight side or a straight edge to it. And you are going to need your highlighter. Okay, so lesson 69. We're looking at angles. We're looking specifically at right, acute, and obtuse angles. Pages 11 and 12. Okay, so our content objective for 4th grade G Geometry 1. I can identify and draw right, acute, and obtuse angles. Language objective. I can use vocabulary related to geometry to describe right, acute, and obtuse angles. I can work with others to create models of right, acute, and obtuse angles. So first, what is an angle? We did look at them in the last lesson just a little bit. The measure of two rays that meet at a common endpoint called the vertex. So we have one endpoint and two rays that continue off of them. And if you remember, a ray has one endpoint and continues in another direction forever. So that's what those arrows are for, to show that they continue forever. Vertex, the corner or point where the sides of a geometric shape meet and form an angle. So here that endpoint we would call a vertex. So here we have 1, 2, 3 vertices. It's just those rays do end at the next endpoint. So we end up with line segments, but those are one vertex, 3 vertices. Vertice is the plural of vertex. To classify, to arrange objects into groups based upon common qualities or attributes. So we're going to be looking at classifying angles based on these elements right here, these sizes. So an acute angle is an angle that measures less than 90 degrees. So it's going to be less than 90. A right angle is an angle that measures exactly 90 degrees. And we use this little square in the corner to indicate right because it's a square corner. That lets us know it's 90 degrees. If it's a perfectly square corner, it's 90 degrees. If it's less than that, it's going to be acute. And we just put this arc in there to show angle. Obtuse angle is an angle that measures larger than 90 degrees, but less than 180. So here, again, we show that arc for the angle. It's greater than 90, so it's a larger angle than the 90 degrees. Acute is a smaller angle than 90 degrees. And then a straight angle is an angle that measures exactly 180 degrees. And 180 degrees actually ends up with a straight line. So a straight line, if you put a point in the middle for the vertex, will be 180 degrees. So an obtuse angle is between a right angle and basically a straight line or a straight angle. Okay, over here, this is the same one that was in the last lesson, but it's just looking at it more. So this is your ray. That was a little light. Has one endpoint and continues forever. A line segment has 2 endpoints. This is why we usually use a straight edge, because you can't draw a straight line without it. Line has no endpoints. We have just our point. An angle has one endpoint with 2 rays. Parallel lines and perpendicular lines we'll talk about more in another lesson. So we have our right angle, has that square corner, perfect square corner. It's exactly 90 degrees. Acute is less than 90. Obtuse is between 90 and 180. So this is going to be smaller than 90 degrees, larger than 90 degrees. Okay, so we're going to try to follow these directions here and see what it gives us. Draw 2 points, A and B. So just somewhere up here, put 2 points, and we're going to label those points, point A and point B. Remember, we always use capital letters for points, never lowercase. Those are used, we save those for variables. They stand for our unknown numbers and equations. Use a straight edge, so get your straight edge out, to draw line segment AB. So to do that, you put your straight edge right up to the points like this. Make sure your pencil is straight up and down and right against your straight edge. And you go from point A to point B. It may not be exactly perfect, but it should be straight. We want that straight from point A to point B. Draw a new point that is not on line A and label it C. So down here I'm going to put point. I'm going to label it C. Draw segment AC. So now I'm going to go from here. I'm going to line that up. Put it straight against there. You should still be able to see the points a little bit. Draw a point on AB, call it D. So on here, I'm going to put another one. It has to be on this segment. I'm going to call it D. Construct line CD. So construct's another way of saying draw. Usually there's steps to get it perfectly, but we're just connecting the two. Use the points you've already labeled to name one angle. So we actually have 1, 2, 3, and this right here, 4 angles we could name. So we just have to choose one of them. Now when you name an angle, in front of it you put an angle symbol. And then we could use any 3 letters. But the vertex always has to be in the middle. So I'm going to label ACD. I'm going to look at this angle right here. This is what I'm going to label. I'm going to use on the line ACD. So angle ACD. We use 3 letters usually because one letter, if I use the letter D, I wouldn't know if I was talking about this angle D or this angle D. So, but if I use the 3 letters, I know exactly which one I'm using. So we use 3 letters usually. Okay, we have some directions to follow here. They're kind of light, but we can still see them. So this says highlight the right angles. So if you can't see, we're looking at right angles. That is the ones we're highlighting. Highlight the right angles. Well, right angles are perfectly square corners. They're straight up and down usually. So there's one of them. And then up here we have a second one. So we have 2 right angles right there. And we can show the right angles with those little boxes. On this one it says highlight the acute angles. So remember, acute angles are the littler ones. They're less than 90 degrees. So they would be smaller than these 2 angles here. So we're looking for the ones that are acute. Well, this one right here is acute. It's smaller than a right angle. Let's see, this one right here is a little bit smaller. It looks close to a right angle, but it's a little bit smaller than a right angle. This one up here is obtuse, but this one on this side is acute. And these 2 look like right angles. So I wouldn't highlight either of those. So this one's definitely acute, this one's definitely acute. This one's very close, but it's still a little bit smaller than a right angle. Okay. Here, highlight. This time it's obtuse angles. So the angles that are bigger than 90 degrees, but not quite a straight angle. So we have definitely one right here. This is a very wide angle. It's more than 90 degrees, and really right opposite of it is also one. This one looks like it might be a right angle. This one right here looks pretty big. This one too. And this one up here looks like an obtuse angle, and so does this one. So they're larger than the 90 degrees. This one, it's kind of hard to tell. Sometimes I need to turn it to see better, but it still looks more like a right angle. I would need an instrument to measure for sure. Okay, and this last one, it says draw a shape with at least, what is it, with at least one right angle and two acute angles. So at least one right angle and two acute angles. So I'm going to use my straight edge. Now this is not going to necessarily be a perfect right angle. I'm going to do the best I can to get my right angle. And then lining up those ends. You always want your pencil or pen right up against the straight edge to get that nice connection. And then both of these angles are acute. And if you look, we get a triangle. And this would be a right triangle. All right, so we're looking at these drawings that have triangles within them. And along the way, there are labeled points if we looked at them as lines and rays and angles. So we have those. So we're going to name different lines, line segments, rays, and angles. Already have the different lines, line segments, rays, and angles. We just need to add the letters to help remind us. So a line on the pizza. This right here is our line on the pizza. I know because it has the arrows at the end to show that they go on forever. So I could use any two letters. I could use CD, DC, CE, EC, DE, ED, any two. So I'm just going to say CE. Okay, now I'm going to look for a line on the mountain. Here's my line. I know because it has the arrows that go forever. And again, two letters. Doesn't matter the order, so I'm going to go with HI, so I can say hi. But any two letters on that line would work, and order doesn't matter for a line. And then our star, well, here is our line. There's only two letters to choose from, and so I'm going to say NM because the order doesn't matter. But in the name, we have to have that line on top. So I know it's line CE, line HI, line NM. Now we're going to look at line segments, and we have lots of choices here. I'm just going to look at this segment right here, this piece from here from B to C. And on this one, I'm going to look at this line segment here. And KJ. So it depends on the piece you want to look at. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different line segments. You just have to choose one of them. Here we've got lots of line segments, and so we could choose any of them. Let's go with just O and P. So again, 2 letters, doesn't matter the order, but we have a line segment on top. That's how we can know it's not a line, it's a line segment, and it's also not talking about the distance between the points. Ray. Now a ray you have to be careful with because the endpoint always has to be first. So on the pizza, here's our ray because it has the endpoint and continues in one direction forever. So the endpoint has to go first. But then I can choose either B or A as my second letter. So I'm going to go with A. Either one will work, but the endpoint must be first. Here we have our ray, this one right here. Here's our endpoint, and it continues forever this direction. I know because of the arrow. So I has to be first because it's the endpoint. And then I could use any other letters. So I'm going to use J. So IJ or IK would work. Here's our ray right here. ML, because the arrow is only on this side, and we have an endpoint here. M is the endpoint, so that has to go first, and L. And of course, with all these names, we have a ray on top. Now, angles, we use 3 letters, and the vertex must be in the middle. So I'm looking at, on this pizza, this angle right here. So I can say ACE, BCD, BCE, ACD, any of those combinations, but C must always be in the middle. So I'm going to go with angle ACE. On this one, here's our angle. This is our vertex, so I must be in the middle. So I can have GIK, HIK, GIJ, HIJ. As long as I is in the middle. I'm going to go with HIJ. Here we have lots of different angles to look at. I'm going to go with the one that's been marked on the star. So LMN or NML. Also, order doesn't matter, so there's even more up. I'm sorry. It only matters that the vertex must be in the middle. So it doesn't matter if N goes first or L goes first, but it does matter that M is in the middle. So I can have N, M, L, but we have to have that angle in front. Angle, NML. All right, here I have a playground scene that has angles in it. When you go on the playground, you'll see lots of different lines and different corners of shapes like the swing sets, the slides, anything like that. And those all have angles. So let's look for some acute angles in this drawing. Well, here's an acute angle right here. This is a vertex, so that has to be in the middle. So I'm going to say angle D, B, E. And we have one more acute angle to look for, and that looks like there's one right here. Angle OPQ. P must be in the middle because it's the vertex. Now we're going to look for right angles, ones that have perfectly square corners. And we have 3 that we're looking for. So it looks like we have one here. FG H, the vertex must be in the middle. And then here's another one, KJL. And there's another one right here on the slide, LMN. We always have that angle in front with the name. Okay, now obtuse angles. So this can be a little bit tricky because it may look like we have mainly right and acute, but if I look at this angle right here, I'm going to use my highlighter just to show. You don't have to highlight it. But this angle, ignoring this line segment here, is an obtuse angle, ABE. And so that means this angle, ABE, CBD is also an obtuse one. Okay, so we're going to be looking more at our acute angles, ones that are smaller or less than 90 degrees. Our right angles, ones that are exactly 90 degrees. Obtuse angles, they're larger or greater than 90 degrees, but smaller than 180. They're not a straight line. And then the straight angles, which are exactly 180 degrees. We're going to do some more with our 3-column notes.